Alright, Ronan MMA, welcome back to the channel. Now, I want to talk about the immediate aftermath of the whole Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou situation. I have a couple topics I want to talk about. One, I want to talk about something Tyson Fury has said after the fact, a statement that he has made, which is basically a full-on excuse for his performance. And considering he officially got the win over Francis Ngannou, the fact that he feels the need to make these excuses is quite telling in my opinion. And also I want to talk about a statement made by Eddie Hearn after the fact, which I find to be quite humorous because, like myself, Eddie Hearn was very skeptical of Francis Ngannou in the boxing world. He was one of the guys at the beginning that basically flat out said he did not really want to do business with him and that he wasn't all that interested. I think he maybe wanted to sit back and wait and see how things would go, but as I said, I was completely wrong. I think 90% of people were completely wrong. And even if you were one of the people that thought Francis Ngannou would have no problems getting a boxing match, if you're going to be honest with yourselves, if you were a massive Francis Ngannou fan, I think it was damn near delusional to expect the performance that we ended up getting, which is just insane. Francis Ngannou just shut all of our mouths in one night and is essentially the biggest name in heavyweight boxing right now. He basically is a lifeline for heavyweight boxing also, by the way. In about 2018, 2019, people were unbelievably excited for heavyweight boxing and the potential matchups we could get out of it after Tyson Fury came back and fought to an extremely exciting draw with Deontay Wilder. Even MMA fans, all combat sports fans, were excited for what could potentially come, but boxing does what it does best, made none of those fights, and all of a sudden we just put our giant freak athlete Francis Ngannou in the mix, and now he's the biggest name in all of boxing. So let's get to the first topic. I want to talk about Tyson Fury's excuse that he made, which is, to me, bullshit, and I'll tell you why in a second. I'll read out the quote and then I will tell you why this is an absolute horseshit excuse coming from Tyson Fury. Now, he says, quote, "I think my timing was quite off. I've been out of the ring for nearly a year. A little bit of ring rust, but it was what it was." Okay, now, first of all, let's just talk about when he last fought. He last fought in December of 2022. Now, it was towards the beginning of December, so I'll give him that. We're closing in on 11 months. Do you know what I mean? This fight was at the end of October. That fight was at the beginning of December. So we're essentially at 11 months, which is a decent chunk of time to be off, especially at his age, I guess. However, Francis Ngannou is older than Tyson Fury, by the way. And Francis Ngannou, if this excuse applies to Tyson Fury, then this excuse applies to Francis Ngannou way more so, because Francis Ngannou's last fight was January of 2022, by the way, in MMA. By the way, had to get knee surgery after that fact, which is a very lengthy recovery. So for probably, let's say, a year, because I do believe it was multiple ligaments in his knee. I think the ACL was one of them, and I think his MCL was also gone. He had to recover. So he's essentially had a year off and then a year where he was able to train, whereas Tyson Fury has been much more active than that, okay? And let's just talk about that. 11 months off, by the way. In between the second and third Deontay Wilder fight, there was a year and a half in between, and he didn't have a fight in between the second and third Deontay Wilder fight. They were just 18 months apart, roughly. It might have even been more than 18 months. So it's not even his biggest layoff. And in that third Wilder fight, he looked pretty fucking good to me. Okay, so I don't know that ring rust is a legitimate excuse here, but as I said, the fact that he feels the need to even make an excuse for his performance against a guy who had his first ever fucking boxing match against the consensus best heavyweight boxer of our generation, some people even say of all time. He was being compared to the likes of Ali, Foreman, Mike Tyson, like all these guys. He was an all-time great, is an all-time great, and it's insane that Francis Ngannou just waltzes in, first ever boxing fight, and goes toe-to-toe with him, split decision, and in the eyes of many, many, many people, and not just MMA fans, he won that fight. If you look at the two of them after the fact, dude, Francis Ngannou looks like he was not in a fight, whereas Tyson Fury looks like he got mugged the night before. Do you know what I mean? Big black eye, all this shit. And what I found to be the most just, sweet thing of all time was that before this fight happened, I can't remember which reporter it was. It might have been a guy from MMA Junkie. Asked Tyson Fury, "Do you expect to see any shenanigans out of Francis Ngannou in that cage?" Kind of like the way we saw Dylan Dennis attempt a double leg on Logan Paul, or the way that we saw Dylan Dennis attempt a guillotine on Logan Paul, or Jake Paul with the guillotine, or Nate Diaz putting Jake Paul in the guillotine, pardon me. And Tyson Fury flat out said, no, this is boxing, this is not MMA. If he does anything like that, he will be disqualified. Where, after, by the way, this came after the fact, okay? Francis Ngannou knocked down Tyson Fury with a clean counter shot, but it didn't land cleanly, which is part of the reason why I think Tyson did not want to engage after the fact. The fact that Ngannou was able to drop him with a grazing shot, I think Tyson Fury thought to himself, holy shit, if he adjusts that an inch or two, I'm going to sleep. That was terrifying. Do you know what I mean? After that, Tyson Fury landed an elbow on Francis Ngannou's face, which landed pretty cleanly right here. Very cleanly, as a matter of fact. And in my opinion, looked a little less accidental than I think people are saying. Because, dude, I don't know, man. It landed a little too cleanly for my liking to call it accidental or unintentional. I think that it could be some dirty boxing, and I'm not talking about in the clinch, but if you were able to open up a cut on a guy, even if you get a point deducted or something like that because of the foul, you could now work on that cut. You could tap it every chance you get, open it up wider and wider and wider, maybe get a doctor stoppage out of it, who knows, maybe fuck up the opponent's ability to see, all this shit. It didn't work because Francis Ngannou is made of fucking titanium or something, so it doesn't matter. He ate that shit and just kept marching forward. But again, I can't believe that Tyson Fury is out here making excuses for his performance against a guy in his professional boxing debut. A guy who, by the way, in MMA wasn't even a technical striker. Like, a lot of people said, oh, this is the two best strikers on the planet, basically, because we had the heavyweight champion in MMA in the UFC, and we had the heavyweight champion in boxing. Francis Ngannou was not that. Ciryl Gane outstruck him on the feet at every moment. Ciryl Gane essentially was able to avoid any big shot that Francis Ngannou threw. Francis Ngannou was not some overly technical striker in the UFC. He would use crazy winging punches to just touch his opponent, and then they would die. But when you get a guy like Ciryl Gane who's able to stick and moves like a middleweight at heavyweight, he wasn't able to land that shit. The only time I've seen him be this patient, this calculated, this technical, was in the second Stipe Miocic fight, and I think that the fact that Stipe beat him the first time probably had a lot to do with that. The fact that his big shots didn't work on Stipe the first time probably had a lot to do with his game plan for the second time around, and it worked in his favor, by the way. He countered Stipe Miocic when Miocic was coming in. Stipe hit him with a good clean shot in the second round. Francis kind of wobbled a little bit. Stipe rushes forward to finish off the job. I think he thought Francis was a little more hurt than he was, and Francis countered him on the way in. So we've seen him be technical, but not often. And it's not even like, even in that fight, I would say, oh my god, that's the best boxer in the UFC. Do you know what I mean? This guy's not even the best representation of what MMA striking can bring. And he went in there and, fucking in the eyes of so many people, beat the best heavyweight boxer of our time, which is just insane. And again, Tyson Fury is making excuses out here, but those excuses apply tenfold to Francis Ngannou. And if you're going to put ring rust on both of them, would you still not favor the heavyweight boxer that has all these titles, all these belts, fucking is undefeated, finishes all these guys? Would you still not favor him over the MMA fighter who was out for an entire year and then had a year to prepare for this first ever boxing match, goes out there and does what he does? Fucking unbelievable. Now, I want to talk about Eddie Hearn, because Eddie Hearn, as I said earlier on, is one of these guys that in the beginning was not overly excited, didn't really want to do business with Francis Ngannou. Now, to be fair to him, he probably wanted to hang back and see how things would work out, because, as I said in the opening, there were a ton of people that were very skeptical of how things would work out. Even if Francis Ngannou was able to get a boxing match with one of these bigger name guys, even his biggest supporters probably knew deep down he would get beat up in that boxing match. And the reason why I was against it in the beginning was that I thought, okay, you've done this deal with the PFL, you've secured a huge chunk of money, and, you know, whatever, just do you, I guess. And what I thought was going to happen was he would go out there and get the shit beaten out of him for a nice payday in boxing, and then his name value would be a little bit diminished, and he would have a harder time selling pay-per-views in the PFL. I think he has completely fucking flipped that on its head. But either way, let's talk about what Eddie Hearn had to say. He said if they have to do Fury versus Usyk, which look, it's still undisputed, but Fury just lost to a bloke that's never boxed before, based. Even Eddie Hearn saying that he fucking lost, okay? Then let Ngannou fight AJ. See what happens. See what happens when somebody lets their hands go on Francis Ngannou properly. Now, I truly, truly, truly hope that this is not just bullshit promoter talk like we get from boxing promoters so very often, because I thought in the immediate aftermath of this fight that Francis Ngannou, I thought he's not ever going to get another boxing fight again. Not because of how poorly he performed, but because of how well he performed. Because if he was able to go toe-to-toe with a guy like Tyson Fury, who has beaten some pretty good names, how in the fuck will he do against all these other guys? I think that Ngannou could knock out Wilder. I think he's more patient, more calculated, more technical than Deontay Wilder. I mean, when you see him, again, go toe-to-toe with Tyson Fury, what heavyweight boxer do you think is just going to fucking wash this dude? So what I think is going to be a problem for him, or I hope is not going to be, is that these promoters are going to be scared to have their guy who they have built up for years and years and years, built up their records, done all this shit, gotten them to the point where they get massive paydays. They're going to now have him fight a guy with, it'll be his second boxing fight, who was supposed to be dog shit, who was supposed to get just completely obliterated against Tyson Fury. They're going to have their guys fight him now. Do you know what I mean? Boxing promoters have this problem where they don't want their guys to lose. And Anthony Joshua is in a situation where he maybe has a little bit less to lose, considering in his last 7 fights, he's like 4-3. Do you know what I mean? And one of them, he got finished by Anthony Ruiz. He lost back-to-back fights to Alexander Usyk. So maybe he feels as though there's a little less risk now, especially since how we saw Francis Ngannou perform against Tyson Fury. If he's able to beat Anthony Joshua, at the very least, it was a guy who also basically beat Tyson Fury. But also, if Anthony Joshua is able to beat Francis Ngannou, then they can set up an Anthony Joshua-Tyson Fury fight, and I think it would be fucking way crazier in terms of how much it would sell if they're able to kind of steal Francis Ngannou's newly found boxing hype, okay? But just crazy to me that at the beginning, he wanted nothing to do with this shit. And now that he sees him beat the best heavyweight boxer of all time, he's throwing his name out there, throwing his fighter's name out there. Which, again, I hope it's not just bullshit. I hope it's not just boxing promoter talk. I hope that Francis Ngannou is able to get more boxing fights. And honestly, I'm a little upset that he does have these obligations in the PFL. Because I would way rather see him just run shit in heavyweight boxing than go fight essentially nobodies in the PFL. Because they've set up like a pay-per-view division for Francis Ngannou. And I don't understand. And I can't, like, who the fuck are they going to have him fight for a pay-per-view event? Do you know what I mean? They're either going to have to wait for some UFC heavyweights to be coming off their contract, or they're going to, like, I don't know what the fuck they're going to do. They don't have a good heavyweight division over there. It's more shallow than a kiddie pool, okay? So, Jesus Christ, man. I can't believe this shit. I know I talked a lot about this on my live stream yesterday, but it got demonetized, so I figured I'd put this up here so it's on record. Again, dude, Francis Ngannou just fucking destroyed everybody's expectations of him. I was wrong about him. It is what it is. I'm very fucking glad that he was able to prove me wrong. And I said that from the very beginning, by the way. Every fucking video I did on Francis Ngannou, I said, I hope he proves me wrong. I want him to do well. I want him to make good money. I want him to do what he wants to do. I just don't think it's going to happen. And it all fucking happened. Not only did it happen, he's, in the eyes of many people today, the best heavyweight boxer on planet fucking Earth, which is just wild to say. Francis Ngannou. There are better boxers in the heavyweight division. Do you know what I mean? I think the power is a big factor, though. You hit Tyson Fury with a shot that doesn't land perfectly cleanly, and he goes down from that. Imagine if that punch landed on his fucking chin. This guy's out cold. At least that's what I would imagine. Man, insane. He literally just shook up the entire world of boxing. He is the biggest name in boxing right now. Everybody's talking about him. He's got Tyson Fury making excuses, which I've never fucking heard before out of Tyson Fury. He's got Anthony Joshua and his promoter trying to lobby for a fight with him. It seems like the opportunities are endless. I hope that the PFL allows him to box more and it wasn't just a one-off kind of situation and now he has to go back and fight with the PFL. I will say this though, man. I am upset that we do not get to see Francis Ngannou, this version of Francis Ngannou, in the UFC. I just fucking swung my mic around, fighting the best in the UFC. I want to see him fight Tom Aspinall. I want to see him fight Sergey Pavlovich. I want to see him fight John fucking Jones. All these fights could have happened, and we don't get any of them. So it's just unfortunate, man. And look, I don't even blame Dana White necessarily, because Conor kind of fucked this whole shit up by going and doing this boxing match, because now everybody wants to do it. And I feel like Dana's even said as much, like, this is why I didn't really want to do it in the beginning. I was so fucking hesitant. I knew everybody was going to want to do it. Francis Ngannou's last pay-per-view didn't even sell 300,000 buys. So if you're a businessman like Dana White is, and you're sitting around thinking, dude, this is a ton of money that I'll have to spend in promoting. This is a ton, like, it's a hassle. It's huge. I'll have to go on a world tour like they did for Floyd Conor, all this shit. For a guy who sold essentially like 9 times less than what Conor McGregor would sell. It's just fucking insane. Nobody could have, thought that this was going to happen, but it did. And I'm glad that it did, because now boxing is interesting again, all of a sudden. And there's just a giant fucking name outside the UFC. And I hope that the UFC does try and get back into the Francis Ngannou business. I don't know if there's a way that they can get him out of his PFL contract or what have you. But holy shit, dude. He just became a massive name overnight on Saturday night. Became one of the best heavyweight boxers on the planet. In his fucking debut, has the consensus all-time great in Tyson Fury making excuses for his performance, and as Eddie Hearn interested in getting a fight with him and Anthony Joshua booked. Insane, dude. Anyways, I just wanted to get all these thoughts out there because, as I said, my stream got demonetized, and I think that it was worth a video. Francis Ngannou fucking killed it. Congratulations to him. Like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. I will see you at the next video. Bye-bye.